And tonight we're going to hear from Adam Ballenger. And Adam is relatively new to the Park City Live Well Center. And I really love your bio, Adam. So if it's okay, I'm just going to read it. He is described as a well-traveled yoga teacher, trainer, guest presenter, who has been fortunate to teach in several countries in North, South, and Central America, in Europe, and in Asia. Lots of U.S. cities as well, and has helped to develop content for a school of Hatha Yoga. I'd say I don't know how to say that word, Adam, so you'll have to just share that with the group. Anyasara, okay, thank you. And he's got extensive experience in health and wellness, and you know, we have with us a seasoned presenter. And he has an undergraduate degree in exercise science with an emphasis in exercise physiology, along with a master's degree in kinesiology. And tonight, Adam is going to talk about 10 ways yoga can improve your health. And I shared with Adam by email that, you know, I'm kind of a new yoga convert, and I do yoga. I do yoga with my online instructor Katie every Friday. And I got to admit, I'm liking it, Adam. So take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's going to take me a couple of moments to get over my nerves here and kind of smooth out. But I have to tell you, for the whole group, this is quite an interesting turn. For the major part of the last decade or so, I've been working on two main things, and one was traveling and teaching and bringing into a broad knowledge base for yoga a little bit more evidence-based research stuff, not only for movement, but into concepts related to mindfulness, cognitive concepts, learning concepts, all sorts of things. And at the very beginning, that was a little bit of a tough push because the yoga community is so steeped in long-term tradition that the presentation of science into that is a little bit of a challenge. The parallel thing for me along with that is to be has been to develop a program for it's seniors, but I think that starts actually at about 45. That period in life when life's effects on us, stress, a lot of hormonal shifts, biomechanical, orthopedic shifts begin to accumulate. And if you want to say our prowess alters, that's a great way to look at it. And so these two lines have been trying to bring to the communities out there a lot of information about yoga. During the pandemic, travel and teaching just stopped, and that's what brought me to Intermountain Healthcare. And this coming over and getting an invite to do this just kind of blew my top off. And you know, I thought, wow, everything I've been wanting to talk about around the world and with the groups I work with and the active aging population, now I got to cram it into like 20 minutes. So I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to slow it down quite a bit. The first thing I want to tell you is when we talk about what yoga can do for you and how yoga can help you be healthy, especially working through a hospital portal here, we have two kind of streams, and one is evidence-based science, and the other one is more qualitative. And so if you do research on the effects and benefits of yoga, on one side, on the evidence-based things, like if we were going to look at a therapeutic modality, it's a little bit challenging, because if somebody goes to a yoga class, number one, if you look at a schedule for a local studio, oftentimes they'll have several different classes, several different styles, and a host of different teachers. And so it's hard to be exactly consistent. By the time we finish up today, what I'd like to encourage you to do is feel out what you can find available to you and make it a learning process for yourself. You're likely to find, if I can put this out there, you're likely to find more than one thing that kind of floats your boat, and you're likely to find a couple things that are really not your cup of tea. A challenge with yoga is to get into the learning process, not get over it. And so I encourage folks to take their time and let it be a lifelong learning process. What that learning entails can be focused on several different parts. And the slides that I'm going to bring up and share with you kind of point towards there's a lot of different benefits that you can get. I'm going to shift my screen here. If you are coming in a little late and you haven't muted your mic, now's a great opportunity to mute yourself.
No.
I still teach a few classes that are broadcasted online, and I do several events online. And it doesn't surprise me at all when somebody falls down online in a yoga pose and shares with sometimes people all over the world their favorite spiritual language. So if you're not muted, take a chance, and before something happens, check and mute. Okay, 10 ways yoga can improve your health. Boy, that's underselling it. That's a little bit about me as I was introduced, and that's one of my pictures. This was from just outside Mexico City. Just so you know, I do travel. Thought I'd put one picture in there. I tried on several of these slides to put some sort of a reference. Not all the links are hot links. You can't click on every one of them. But if you do download a copy of the presentation, several of the links you can click directly on if you're online, or you can cut and paste several of these as well. From this article, this wasn't really a study, it's important to look at a little bit of the difference between yoga traditional and yoga modern, or modern or traditional yoga. Oftentimes you can find a yoga class in a local studio where there'll be some sort of a chanting or some meditation type work. But a lot of times in the West today, a lot of our yoga, even when it's gentle, is fairly physically based. And so a lot of the modern modalities on the yoga mat are not going to push ethics and concepts of self-awareness and self-restraint and self-exploration, unless it's really about your breath work and about your movement work. You will find instructors, I believe, if you look around, who are going to bring aspects of this in. But if you were to get really deep into the traditional side, there's a heavy spiritual element to that. And if you dive farther down into it, it's Hindu based. And so if you are concerned about religio-spiritual contexts, don't be shocked if you find that. A modern yoga or yoga modern aspect of it, there can be spirituality. And a lot of times it gets filled in with either some of the popular things these days are Tantra based, or teachers weaving in Buddhist based teachings. For one, they don't really go through a pantheons of gods and goddesses. So when you look through here, the spiritual philosophies of the Vedas and the Tantras, if you do get into a class, I would say 20 or 30 years ago when I was starting out, it wasn't uncommon to hear a teacher actually read part of a text and start to bring out moral and ethical concepts and religio-spiritual, social morals and stuff like that. So if you do go to a class and you hear some of these, don't be too shocked. I think a lot of it's moved more recently to have a lot of Buddhist context as well. The Tantras is kind of a growing thing. When I first moved to Utah to teach, the first time I mentioned that part of my philosophical studies were in the region of Tantra. It was quite an interesting look about 20 years ago on 9th and 9th in a large classroom when the folks heard that I'd been studying Tantra. So if you're not familiar with Tantras, except for some very flavorful variations of the Tantric philosophical pantheon, most of it has nothing to do with I don't know how to put it, reproductive postures or whatever you want to think about there. So the Tantras are a wonderful area of philosophy if you want to get into them. The Vedas are fantastic as well, but I think it's helpful to get a teacher who's going to kind of distill some of those things if possible. So the moral and ethical sides of how to hold yourself in a healthier relationship to yourself and to the public around you, that's coming from a lot of the traditional Vedas, or possibly the teachers bringing it in from modern Buddhist concepts. This was a quote that I liked a lot, or a little clip from an article. The follower of yoga learns to work with the forces and processes of life as a partner, coupled rather than in conflict and unease with their own nature. So if you come to a yoga class, a yoga asana class, and you step onto the yoga mat, a great way to think of it is learning how to work with your body as a partner. And so when your body gives you feedback and you have a particular response to it, you have an opportunity to slow down and improve the learning process. And you might be able to help the body functionally move better by learning how to take feedback in and distilling it down, exploring and applying what you're learning. It's a great way to think of a skill set that you can take off the mat, that it's not necessarily just learning how to move better, but it's actually learning how to partner in a learning process. And that's something in the last decade of my life as well. I've taken it right into and applied it to being married and having a family and things like that. So what you learn how to do in a yoga pose on the yoga mat, hopefully that's something we can transfer off into everyday life stuff. Okay. So on the topic of physical benefits, and I put a longer quote up here. I liked this part out of the paper because it had so many different places if you want to look up some resources that they're shown, and these are more of the quantitative side of it, that you can definitely develop an improved lung capacity, improved oxygen delivery, decreased VO2 and respiration rate, decreased resting heart rate, and almost all these under most situations would be positive health markers. And on that side of practicing yoga, if you are practicing in a way that there is a physical exertion, it's not necessarily a gentle class, these things are oftentimes just naturally part of what a teacher is going to be bringing into a practice. So you probably don't have to look for any particular style to help you with these. This is a lot of the breath and body movement, even if it's not brought down into a very distinct pattern of work. This is pretty common stuff. I wanted to put this slide in here so that I didn't mislead anybody. And about 8 or 9 years ago, when I bring this up in trainings, just to slow down some of the yoga teachers' claims that were out there, I didn't want to mislead anyone here. So if you are thinking that doing a yoga asana class, or a really hard yoga asana class, an intense one, is going to be something that's intense enough where you can say, this is part of my cardiovascular fitness. Well, I hate to say it, but it's probably not going to meet a measurement of what we would consider beyond this MET equivalent, which is a way that will measure energy expenditure and work done at the same time. One MET is kind of just everyday activity, not doing anything particularly strenuous. And in a general yoga class, when it was studied in a broad spectrum of different classes, I think on average, there was a short period of about 10 minutes or so that exceeded about 1 to 2 METs of exertion, and the rest of the class was moderate to low intensity. So if you're thinking this is your cardiovascular fitness, if you're starting from a really low point, this might, kind of bump it up a little bit, but you'd probably do better to walk up a hill or do something else. So I don't want to mislead you. Okay. So if we are looking at some of the scientific stuff about the body, there is a lot of evidence to show that we can improve strength and we can improve flexibility. The strength, if you look at a lot of fitness modalities out there, most of the strength stuff that we're doing is body weight strength conditioning. So we're not really, most classes aren't going to use bands or dumbbells or things like that. But you do have to manage your own body weight, your own body mass in various postures and poses and the transitions between those. And for lots of folks, even if they already have a certain level of conditioning, there's often areas of strength development that will still show up within the practice of yoga asana. So you may have a movement that you're already really good at because of your CrossFit class, but if you get into a yoga session, we're going to move in several different planes of motion and in several different combinations of body positioning. So even somebody who has a moderate degree of already accumulated fitness, strength and flexibility is still pretty easy to improve upon. If you do take classes where the teacher alters your sequence somewhat regularly, we can continue to add stimuli and continue to add strength and maintain flexibility. So that kind of gets in the way of what we might call a plateau. So a lot of things, if you went into the gym and you just did the same exercises over and over again, you'd probably hit a plateau at some point and not get much development because we're not really doing much new and the body's adapted well. A lot of yoga does alter and shift its variability. So yoga is a great way to keep developing strength and flexibility. In the study that I was pulling this from, and in a couple of the other studies that back this up quite well, they didn't really go into exactly where and how much strength, but the area of strength that I like the most about this is a lot of our stabilizers in our body. So we are going, if you learn how to use your glutes and quads and stuff like that really well, you can develop those. But if you start to think about the areas in our body that we lose a lot of control in, and a lot of our stability stuff, our trunk and our core, yoga can be great for that, especially if you found a teacher and if you found a style that promotes that well. A little bit lower, yoga can help with postural control, attention, and confidence. Man, can I think of anything better to improve upon as I age? I kind of gave up on large pecs and defined deltoids after my late teens. So now as I get past 50 and I push the second half of my life, postural control, attention to the world around me, and the confidence to go out and explore the world and to take care of myself and contribute to the community I'm in. Yoga seems like it's a positive effect, has a positive effect on those as well. If you add meditation, which might seem like it's a no-brainer that that's part of yoga, but it's not always. If you take one of the classes of mine, or if you've taken one of the past, you might notice we typically start and end the class in a seated pose rather than finishing in a lay down pose. So you will find classes or styles that have meditation as an actual part. Sometimes it's just a few minutes. Meditation shows to have a positive effect after not that many minutes. You don't have to do it for 20 or 30 to start to get benefits out of it. But some of the studies that we looked at, yoga with meditation can also help with weight loss. Now, why that is has a much longer explanation. I added the eat a plant-based diet. That's a pretty good no-brainer. But from the Journal of Medicine, Exercise, Nutrition, and Health, the combination of flexibility, strength, and motor control demands may qualify yoga as a complementary exercise to improve overall fitness. This is one of the things that I'll tell clients or students is that I could put a lot of my fitness just on yoga. If I just had to pick one thing, you could get a great effect out of just yoga. But if you wanted to add yoga and walking, or if you did a little bit of weights or swimming or something like that, that yoga seems like it is the absolute best complement to everything else fitness-wise. I don't know if I'll have time to get into my whole spiel about how yoga can affect learning. And if you were to think about how we look at how people move and what gets in the way of them moving well over a lifespan, a lot of times we get into movement dysfunctions and issues with the body and comfort and stuff like that. So learning how to continue to move with our aging and changing bodies requires the learning and the adapting to that new body. It's not a fix the body idea, but it's a learn how to work with that or the therapies that we get. So yoga is one of the best ways I found for people to learn how to work with what they have over a lifespan. And then if you want to pair that with anything else, your improved movement on the mat, your improved balance or control or whatever it is, if you want to take that out into your cross-country skiing or walking or hiking, the effect that you get out of that other stuff just appears to go through the roof. Okay. The weight loss side of that, I kind of dropped that comment a couple moments ago. The weight loss side of that isn't just things about stress management, but it gets down into an area where I didn't bring up a lot of research, but if we start to look at things like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral work, yoga is starting to show up in research in those areas as well, where a person can turn in, introspect, and begin to deal with life stresses in that way rather than picking other things. And I'm not going to go as simple as saying stress eating, but that seems to be one of the ways, even if they're not doing a dialectical behavioral therapy thing, but the attributes there seem to be one of the ways that we manage the lifestyle that helps us lose weight as well. Okay, this was, I think, the main photo that I left in from the slideshow that was shared with me, and it was somebody just after giving birth. So yoga reduces perceived stress and improves adaptive autonomic responses to stress in healthy pregnant women. So if you want to, if you're going to have a child and you want to deal with all the stresses going into it, having the child, and then especially postnatal, do yoga. I can't stress it enough. You can ask my wife. I did leave this in. I altered the chart just a little bit because I've done a lot of online trainings. I just wanted to put up something with big numbers and charts. This isn't anything scientific, and none of these numbers mean anything, but I thought it'd be a little stress relief during the presentation. So there you go, one chart. Now, instead of just going over solely body stuff, I wanted to make sure we touched on the mind things as well. And this was one of the references I used from the Psychology and Neuroscience. I put a little link down here at the bottom to the article. Yoga and emotional regulation. During a pandemic, I can't think of something that I wish the world and everyone could do, no matter which side of the political aisle you're on, but to be able to regulate emotions in a constant and even more rapid changing world within us and around us. Yoga has strong evidence, both in the qualitative and quantitative area, about being able to support emotional regulation. So, again, do yoga. Okay. Now, if you did want to take it a step farther, and this is one of my hopes, is that the folks who I see coming to yoga, I'm not pushing therapy on them, and I'm oftentimes not even telling them where any of this stuff comes from, and I don't make the talk content in there as a lecture-based program. But if you start to look at traditional yoga and the mindfulness that you get from mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, the MBSR program, is coming from a traditional area of Buddhist practice as well. So if we look at both of those paths, there is a lot of inside the person technique that would support almost any type of therapeutic aspect out there in the world. And so this study, I thought, was a great one because it looked at traditional yoga and then therapy as well. The traditional yoga wasn't mixed with therapy, but it was compared as one of the modalities, one of the control groups. And so one of the things they showed with relation to individuals who are running into burnout and leaving work. So we'd like to serve the workplace here. That traditional yoga, which has a little bit more of that noticing your own stress, being mindful and self-aware, has shown to be a positive modality to work with people who are suffering from burnout and leaving the workplace, causing us to, increase our insurance issues on that aspect as well. This slide was given to me, and I don't have any idea what those 3 boxes mean, but I know where they'll take you. Okay, let me see if I can shift back here.
Hey, Adam, thank you so much. You can leave the QR codes up, so maybe that would be great if people can see this. And what these do is people can use the QR codes on their phone to connect with information around the Live Well centers and the services that are available there for people who may be interested in weight management or diabetes prevention. They can access information about the Way to Health program. And of course, we do all this work in partnership with nutrition services and clinical nutrition. And if anyone is interested in accessing their benefits to have one-on-one counseling with a registered dietitian, please scan that QR code on the right. So Adam, we have a few minutes left for questions. And I think people were just so engrossed in everything you had to say. You shared some great information. I'm not seeing a lot of questions in the chat. But I was really intrigued by some of the comments you made about combining your yoga practice maybe with other fitness activities.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about it in the context of, does it, for example, have an impact on injury prevention? I would think yes, but I don't know.
Well, I can give you a little feedback on that.
Okay.
Again, yoga is a broad term. It'd be like saying, let's go lift weights. It doesn't really specify what we're going to do, but I'll point out that a teacher or a program can be developed. And I've taught this as I mix functional movement and corrective exercise concepts in a yoga asana practice in with some small group trainings for instructors, that you can take a yoga program and take their traditional movements, and you can work on things like posture control, stability, mobility, things like that. So if you wanted to prevent injury within some other sport area, you can definitely tailor a program towards whatever the specific needs of that are. And that's not something that's uncommon. I have a couple of friends who've kind of made their way in the industry by working with pro sports teams, and they do that all the time. Awesome.
That is great. A few questions kind of coming into the chat now, so we'll just finish up with those. One was, what is your favorite yoga pose for meditation?
So I talk about this occasionally. I'm a little over 3 decades in this process, and my body doesn't feel the way it used to. So I don't sit and meditate for, I won't tell you how long I've done that for. I like to sit on a nice thick pillow, a good 4 or 5, sometimes 6 inches. If I've been hiking or skiing, I go for a thicker one. My body's pretty well conditioned to be able to sit with my legs crossed. Occasionally I'll do that up against a wall with a little bit of a pillow supporting my back. So I'm in full favor of supporting the body as it expresses it would like to be.
I love that. Okay, we probably have time for one more quick question. Is there a minimum or a maximum time frame for a yoga session? That's a good question.
That's a wonderful question. So you'll find a lot of different recommendations out there from different yoga studios and different styles, how many days a week and how many minutes per session. I think if we're going to ask, is there a minimum, then we probably should ask, what's the effect that we're going to base that on? So you can get quite an effect on comfort in your range of motion, just by doing a short amount of stretches. What I look at first when I make a recommendation is, when do we start to get and accumulate noticeable benefits? And I think that's a pretty easy thing to do in as little as 20 minutes.
Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We're going to invite you back again so you can talk more about yoga practice, because, as you know, and I think many people on the webinar this evening know, participation in yoga has exploded during the pandemic, both as a way to do physical activity at home. There's lots of online resources, but also to kind of manage all the pandemic-induced stress. And so we're fortunate to have expert instructors like yourself and Shanda Vanneman and others, who are teaching yoga in our Livewell Center. So for those of you who are interested in kind of accessing that expert instruction, don't hesitate to reach out. Before we close out, I just want to remind people that our next Livewell webinar will be on February 16th, and we'll be hearing from my partner, Dr. Jake Viegel, who is going to talk about motion is lotion, how regular physical activity is good for joint health. So coming to us from a sports medicine physician. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks again, Adam. Have a great evening, everyone.
Take care, Liz.
Okay, bye.